Good day, everyone. Welcome to our group presentation in Ed 302, Assessment in Learning. Since we are done with Module 2, we will now proceed on our next lesson in this subject, which is the Module 3 of Assessment and Learning. But before anything else, let me formally introduce myself. My name is Jonal Ann Ihamon, a third-year BS Ed English student, and together with my group mates, we will discuss to you the topics in Module 3, which is composed of two lessons, the Lesson 5 and the Lesson 6. To assess the attainment of educational objectives, conducting a test is one method. Test is a tool, a technique or method intended to measure students' knowledge or ability to complete a particular task. It is considered as a form of assessment. Tests should meet some basic requirements such as validity and reliability to ensure its usefulness and function. This learning module is slanted towards these concepts. The chapter also focuses on developing paper and pencil tests for assessing the attainment of educational objectives based on Bloom's taxonomy. It discusses guidelines in constructing different paper and pencil tests and contains examples of test items as a basis for the guidelines. Moreover, concepts of item analysis, item validity, reliability, item difficulty, and discrimination index will be discussed in the following lesson. Now let's begin the discussion. Lesson 5 is about distinguishing and constructing various paper and pencil tests. So the specific learning outcomes are to distinguish different types of paper and pencil tests, construct a table of specifications, and follow accordingly the guidelines in constructing paper and pencil tests. I have here a question for you to answer. Why do you think planning a test for classroom activity is important? Anyone in the class are requested to answer, or you may just chat your answer in the in-call messages if you have any idea. So planning a test is an important part of assessing students' understanding of the course content and their level of competency in applying what they are learning. With planning a test, teachers can provide information about what students should have to know and can do. To plan effective tests, teachers also need to know what the students misunderstand and where the misconceptions lie. Whether you use low stakes and frequent evaluations such as quizzes or high stakes and infrequent evaluations like midterm and final, careful design will help provide more calibrated results. There are 5 important steps in planning a test. The first one is, of course, identify test objectives. An objective test, if it is to be comprehensive, must cover the various levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So in the previous discussion, we've already know what various levels of Bloom's taxonomy is. Each objective consists of a statement of what is to be achieved, preferably by the students. So I have here an example. If we want to construct a test on the topic subject-verb agreement in English for a grade 5 class, the following are the typical objectives under Bloom's taxonomy. We have knowledge or remembering. The students must be able to identify the subject and the verb in a given sentence. For comprehension or understanding, the students must be able to determine the appropriate form of a verb to be used given the subject of a sentence. For application or applying, the students must be able to write sentences observing rules on the subject-verb agreement. For analysis or analyzing, the students must be able to break down a given sentence into its subject and predicate. For evaluation or evaluating, the students must be able to evaluate whether or not a sentence observes rules on subject-verb agreement. And for synthesis or creating, the students must be able to formulate rules to be followed regarding subject-verb agreement. So objective tests are useful to check that learners are coming to terms with the basics of the subject in order to have a firm foundation and knowledge. They are useful because it can test a wide sample of the curriculum in a short time and can be marked easily, and technology can assist with this. The second one is deciding on the type of objective test to be prepared. The test objectives guide is a kind of objective test that will be designed and constructed by the teacher. The task will be formulated must be aligned with the learning outcome. This is the principle of constructive alignment. So when we say constructive alignment, this is used for devising teaching and learning activities and assessment tasks that directly address the intended learning outcomes in a way not typically achieved in a traditional lectures, tutorial classes, and examinations. Going back, it is important for the test objectives guide to be decided on what kind of objective test should be applied to which we will be going to design and construct as a teacher. This means that we have to align the test with the lesson objective or outcome. For instance, for the first 4 levels, we may want to construct a multiple choice type of test, while for the application and judgment, we may give an essay test or a modified essay test. At all times, the test to be formulated must be aligned with the learning outcome. So later on this video, we will know the different types of paper and pencil tests used in conducting a test in a classroom. The third one is to prepare a table of specifications or the TOS. A TOS is a task map that guides the teacher in constructing a test. It is to make sure that there is a balance between items that test lower level thinking skills and those which test higher order thinking skills, and also balance between easy and difficult items. A table of specification can be used to help teachers frame the decision-making process of test construction and improve the validity of teachers' evaluations based on tests constructed for classroom use. So here's a picture of what TOS looks like, which will be elaborated to us by the next reporter. Another important thing to know on planning a test is number 4, constructing the draft test items. So why do we need to draft a test items? Drafting a test item will help us determine whether the type of test is too easy for the students or maybe it might be too difficult for them. It is proposed that there should be a double desired number of items to be constructed in the draft. This is in case after the tryout phase and the item analysis. So you have to eliminate some items from the draft. For instance, if there are 5 knowledge level items to be included in the final test form, then at least 10 knowledge level items should be included in the draft. The last one is tryout and validation. Now that we have created a draft on test items, we will now do a tryout to a group of pupils or students to see its accuracy. It is to determine the item characteristics through item analysis, item validity, reliability, and practicality. Most often, however, the tryout phase is not done due to lack of time. Sometimes it is being omitted, which needs to work on by a teacher and give a little attention to see if the test is valid. The purpose of this tryout is to determine the item characteristics through item analysis and if the characteristics of the test itself has validity, reliability, and practicality. Those are the 5 important steps in planning a test. Always remember that planning a test in a classroom setting will help you guide throughout your lesson, and as a future educator, it is our duty to deliver and make tests more valid and reliable. Stay tuned because we will now know what TOS is to be discussed to us by the next reporter.
Good morning guys, I'm Kating Handog and today I'm going to discuss the table of specification or the TOS. So before anything else, let us first discuss or define the table of specification, which it is a plan prepared by a classroom teacher as basis for construction. So if engineers have their blueprints in building construction, as teacher, we also have this plan. We call it the test blueprints. Diba, no matter how small or big a house, it needs a plan. Otherwise, construction will be unorganized and weak and not reliable at all. The same goes in making classroom tests. So, we need a table of specification, a tool used to ensure that the test or assessment measures the content and thinking skills that the test intends to measure. So the primary purpose of table of specification is to ensure alignment between the items or elements of an assessment and the content skills of construct that the assessment intend to assess. So that's FRAE 28. So in this video, I will also include the importance of table of specification. So the importance of table of specification is it ensures that a fair and representative questions appear on the test. So kung anong lesson ang maraming definitions, we have witnessed that if what is the lesson that has lots of definition, the questions will be focused on there. So for example, we have 50 items test. Almost half of it focuses on one competencies. So we measure the one competencies, but how about the other learning competencies? So with TOS, so it made a fair and a distribution of test question based on the length of hours that the learner was taught by the teacher. And it also improved the validity of teachers' evaluation based on the test constructed. So if there is a table of specification, the test question will be aligned with the learning objectives So you should also always consider the question to fit it with the skills that the students need to learn. It makes your evaluation more valid. It also helps the teacher to identify the type of items they need to include on their test. So, for example, if you think that the questions you made measured already a specific skills, you should think of questions that could measure other learning skills. And it provides the teacher with evidence that a test has content validity, which is the content validity is very important, and that it covers what should be covered. And it helps measure the lower thinking skills and higher and lower thinking skills of a student, as what I've said earlier. So question is very important since it makes the bright student distinct from the rest of the class. Although there are some instances during the exam, especially for some students, the most difficult question is that in the test can be very easy, and there are also students who will find the easiest question difficult. So that is the importance of TOS. So this is the figure 1 table of specification prototype that can be seen in the module, which it has there above the level, the objectives, the item numbers, the number, and the percent, which the level correspond to the Bloom's revised taxonomy of Anderson and Krathwohl. So it has there the level recalling with an objectives of identify subject-verb agreement, and the item numbers correspond to the test number where we can find the exam which answer the objectives of identify subject verb agreement, which it can be found in the test item number 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and it has 5 items test. So for us to get the 14.29%, we have to divide the 5 to 35, the total of items test, and multiply it to 100, and we have the 14.29. And in understanding, the test can be seen in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and it has also a total of 5 test numbers. And we have to divide it to 35 again and multiply it by 100, and we have the product of 14.29%. Same with applying, analyzing, and evaluating. In creating, the test is part 2, which means it is an essay with a total items or total points of 10. Then we have to divide it to 35 and multiply it by 100. Then we have 28.57%. And if we total the 14.21 from recalling to creating, which 28.57%, then we will get the 100%, which correspond to the 35 total items of test. So this is the figure 2 table of specification in universal design for learning. So it uses the Bloom's taxonomy of 1956, the original, which the level is knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And it has its own objective. The items numbers were just the same with the figure 1 that I have explained kanina. So it has the matching type kind of exam, and it has the number items of 1 to 5 where we can find the test items. And in each number, it has 1 point with a total of 5 points. And the 5, we have to divide it again by 35 and multiply it to 100. Then we get the 14% total. And in comprehension, just the same with the knowledge, it has multiple choice type of test and 1 to 5. So each number has 1 point with a total of 5 points, and we have to divide it again to 35 and multiply it to 100. Then we get the 14% total. So in application, it has the items short answer kind of test, and the test can be found in number 2 and number 5. It has 2 points, and the test can be also be found in essay test number 3, which has 3 points. And we have to multiply it to 35 and multiply it by 100. Then we get the total percent of 20. Same with analysis and synthesis and evaluation, which the total of percent is 100, and that corresponds to the 35 item test that was given by the teacher. So in the first TOS, or table of specification, that is the figure 1 table of specification prototype, we can see that there are 5 items that deals with knowledge, right? Similarly, 5 items represent the analysis. So the first 5 levels of Bloom's taxonomy are equally represented in the test. That is the recalling, understanding, applying, analyzing, and evaluating. That is the test. While the synthesis, the creating, the last part, it tested through essay, is weighted equivalent to 10 points. However, we can also decide not to have an equal number of items for each level, just like in the second TOS. So, this is an alternate way of deciding the number of items for a topic is to base it on the time spent in class for a particular topic to cover, or session, number of session. So, out of total of 20 sessions, 2 sessions were spent to cover the first topic. That is 10% of the time spent. So, the teacher decided to make a 40 items test to determine the number of items to test for the first topic. So, the teacher gets 10% of the total number of items. So, since 10% of 40 is 4, the first topic is distributed to test item 1 to 4. So, for topic number 5, 3 sessions were spent to cover the topic. So 3 out of 20 session is 15, and 15% of 40 is 6. So there are 6 items designated for topic number 7. So it really depends on the time spent. It's up to the teacher on how he or she make his table of specification. So that would be all for my report, the table of specification. So if you have problem, if you have difficult in understanding my report, you can also search it to Google and watch more video on how to make a table of specification. So that would be all, and thank you so much.
Good day, classmate, and to our Dean and Instructor, Mrs. Glyza Catalan. I am Dali Stephanie A. Jumento, your discussant for today. My topic is about the selected response type of test under Module 3, Lesson 5, Distinguishing and Constructing Various Paper and Pencil Tests. Do you have any idea what is paper and pencil test? If you do, don't forget to share your thoughts in the in-call messages. Paper and pencil assessment refers to traditional student assessment formats such as written tests and also to standardized tests that ask students to use pencils to fill in bubbles on a scannable answer sheet. In the classroom, paper and pencil assessment frequently refers to tests scored objectively, which are meant to measure memorized knowledge and lower levels of understanding as compared with performance-based assessment, which is meant to measure deeper understanding through skills and ability. Paper and pencil tests can either be selected response or constructed response type. So now, we have selected response test. Selected response test items are referred to as objective assessments. This item format has several advantages. One of the most important advantages is the ability to test a wider range of materials than constructed response type items. Selected response include options such as multiple choice, matching, and true or false questions. These item types have many qualities in common as well as several unique characteristics. Selected response requires that the students choose one correct answer per item. Students do not have to come up with their own answers. They instead are given options to select. An understanding of these qualities will guide you in selecting the most appropriate format for your testing needs. These question types can be very effective and efficient methods for measuring students' knowledge, skills, and reasoning. Because many of the standardized tests are based heavily on multiple choice questions, teachers should be skilled at developing effective objective assessment items. In addition, teachers should be able to construct quizzes that target higher level thinking skills, consistent with the application, analysis, and synthesis levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and they should evaluate their instruments by conducting item analysis. This slide contains the illustration of different question type of selected response test. Multiple choice test. The multiple choice test or MC type of test has a stem that poses the problem or the question and 3 or 4 answer choices or options. The stem is the opening, a problem to be solved, a question asked, or an incomplete statement to be completed. One of the choices is the undeniably correct answer, and the other options are incorrect answers considered as the distractors. Multiple choice test items can be used to test factual recall, levels of understanding, and ability to apply learning or analyzing and evaluating. Multiple choice tests can also provide an excellent pre-assessment indicator of student knowledge as well as a source for a post-test discussion. A class discussion can address why the incorrect responses were wrong as well as why the correct responses were right. With a multiple choice response format, a large number of different topic areas or tasks can be covered within the same test and the questions are easy to score. Unfortunately, multiple choice questions are difficult to construct and can be challenging to select when using a test bank. Because all potential answers must be chosen by some candidates, it is also time-consuming to write good questions. Shown in this slide are some examples of multiple choice and general guidelines that may help us in creating this type of test efficiently. Matching type. Matching type is somewhat like MC type in that there are item stems, phrases or statements, and answer choices that are required to be matched to the item stems. There are two types of matching type of test. One, perfect matching type, in which an option is the only answer to one of the items in the stem. And two, imperfect matching type, in which an option is the answer to more than one item in the stem. Thus, an answer may be repeated. The matching test item format provides a change of pace, particularly for self-check and review activities. Many instructional designers employ them in quizzes and tasks too. They are effective when you need to measure the learner's ability to identify the relationship or association between similar items. They work best when the course content has many parallel concepts, for example, terms and definitions, objects or pictures and labels, symbols and proper names, cause and effects, and scenarios and responses. In comparison to multiple choice questions, the matching test item enables you to cover more material in a single question. Because of this, they are excellent for intermittent knowledge checks, a very effective testing strategy, and can offer a great objective measurement. On the other hand, a drawback of a matching type test is its propensity to be used for straightforward information recall. Higher order thinking abilities, like problem solving, must frequently be practiced and tested with adult learners. Use this format for more than just remembering facts. Instead, look for ways to incorporate matching into application and analysis as well, such as by posing a brief scenario and soliciting the best response. The following are some examples of matching type. The matching type test item format provides a way for learners to connect a word, sentence, or phrase in one column to a corresponding word, sentence, or phrase in a second column. The items in the first column are called premises, and the answers in the second column are the responses. The convention is for learners to match the premise on the left with a given response on the right. By convention, the items in column A are numbered and the items in column B are labeled with capital letters. True or false? True or false test items, also referred to as alternative response questions, are used to assess a student's ability to determine whether a statement is correct. True or false items have the advantage of being easy to write. More can be given in the same amount of time compared to multiple choice items. Reading time is minimized and they are easy to score. The disadvantage of this type of test is the large error component due to guessing. Haladina in 1999 concludes that this format is not recommended for standardized testing programs but may be useful for classroom testing and is certainly open to experimentation. For example, George Washington was the first president of the United States. Students would answer true because this is a factual statement. True or false questions are popular because of their versatility. These types of questions can be used in any content area. True or false questions are easy to write and easy to grade in an objective way, making them ideal for situations in which there is a great deal of content to cover in an assessment. However, for any given question, students have a 50-50 chance of guessing the correct answer. Scores are likely skewed due to a student's ability to correctly guess the right choice. Feedback is limited since the answers do not indicate why the students choose a particular answer. Here are some examples of true or false tests and a guide on how to effectively make this type of test. In this part, we will have an activity to test your knowledge and understanding about the discussion. The title of the activity is Think, Collaborate, and Share. Think about what you have learned today with our discussion. Next, collaborate with your group and discuss the top 3 things you've learned. And lastly, as a class, let's share something we have all learned. Only one member of the group will tell us what you've learned. I think 3 minutes is enough for you to complete this task. Okay, time's up. You may now share to us your ideas. Should you have questions, don't be shy and feel free to ask. Everyone, thank you for your cooperation and please give yourselves a round of applause. I hope you enjoy and learn something important from my report. Always remember, good tests consist of good items according to Thomas Haladina. Have a great day ahead!
Good day, everyone. I am Jimboy Villasida, and today I gonna discuss the constructed response types under the types of paper and pencil test. So, what is constructed response? A constructed response is a type of open-ended essay question that demonstrates cognitive knowledge and reasoning. A constructed response item is an assessment item that asks students to apply knowledge, skills, and or critical thinking abilities to real-world, standards-driven performance tasks. So, what are constructed response items? The constructed response items are open-ended questions, require several sentences or brief paragraph, require higher level thinking than simple recall, and the application of students' knowledge, making comprehension, identifying patterns, evaluating points of view, making generalization, synthesizing information, allow for the examination of student thinking, scored using rubrics that provides verifying degrees of credits. So that is the constructed response items. So, the next is completion type of test. Completion questions requires a student to complete a statement that is missing one or more key elements, words, paraphrase, number, and etc. Similar to matching and true or false, completion questions are considered better for assessing lower level of cognitions and are best to check whether key facts have been memorized. Completion test is the test consists of a series of items which requires the testee to fill a words or phrase on the blanks. This is also called filling the blanks type of test. So, here are the rules and suggestions for the construction of completion test. First, give the student a reasonable basis for the responses desires. Avoid indefinite statement. So, the example that the statement is wrong, Carlos Linus was born in blank. To make it right, Carlos Linus was born in the year 1707. So the next is avoid over multilated statement. Example that is wrong is blank was the first to view blank under the blank. And to make it right, Antonio von Leeuwenhoek was the first to view bacteria under the microscope. And now, let's proceed to the second number. Avoid giving the student unwarranted clues to the desired response. A. Wherever possible, avoid A and immediately before the blank. Example, wrong example is unblank cell is composed of nucleus. The right is eukaryotic cell is composed of nucleus. So, let's proceed to B. Do not indicate of the expected answer by varying the length of blanks. Example, first, ribosomes is where synthesis of protein occurs. Second, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Third, cell membrane guards the entry and exit of material in a cell. And the next is C. Avoid lifting statement directly from the book. This is the wrong example. Global warming is the result of the accumulate of heat on the surface of the earth brought about by the concentrated of gases in the blank. The next is D. Omit only keywords of phrases rather than trivia details. E. Guard against the possibility that one item or part of the test may suggest the correct response to another items. F. Avoid giving grammatical clause to the answer expected. Example, the authors of the modern cell theory were blank. To improve it is modern cell theory was theorized by Matthias Kelden, Theodor Skoberg, and Rudolf Virchow. So now let's proceed to number 3. Arrange the test so as to facilitate scoring. A. Allow 1 point for each blank correctly filled. Avoid fractional credits or unequal weighing of items in a test. B. Select the items to which only one correct response is possible. C. Arrange the items as far as possible so that the student's responses are in a column of the right of the sentence. And now here's the provided example. First example is a device use magnifying object that cannot be seen by the naked eye is called. The answer is microscope. The second example is blank is a type of microscope that contains two or more lens system, and the answer is compound microscope. Third example is blank part of a microscope that is used for final focusing. The answer is fine adjustment knob. And the fourth example is the magnification of high power object is blank. The high magnification power of object is 40 times. And the D is the scoring is more rapid if the blank are numbered and the student is directed to write his response in the appropriate number blanks. And letter E is prepare a key for scoring by reading on a copy of the test all acceptable answer. And now, here is the sample test items of completion test. Direction. Fill in the blank the correct word or phrase. Write your answer at the right column. First is, psychology is the study of blank. Second is, the utilization of the biological organisms, systems, and process to convert material into variety of products is called blank. Third is, blank discovered penicillin by accident. Fourth is, blank and blank say that the structure of DNA is double helix. So the answer of number 1 is algae. The number 2 is biotechnology. Number 3, Alexander Fleming. And number 4 is James Watson. And number 5 is Francis Crick. So let's proceed to completion test. This test consists of a series of items which requires the testee to fill a word or phrase on the blank. This is also called filling the blank type of test. The test student must be certain that testee produce only the answer she wants to be used in each blank. Let's proceed to the definition. Essay test is a test that requires the student to compose responses, usually lengthy up to several paragraphs. The next is distinctive feature of essay test. The distinctive feature of essay type of test is the freedom of response. Pupils are free to select, relate, and present ideas that own words. Now, let's proceed to the uses of essay test. First is assess the ability to recall, organize, and integrate ideas. Second, assess the ability of express oneself in writing. Third, ability to supply information. Fourth, assess the student understanding of subject matter. And the last is measure the knowledge of factual information. And the next is form of ACTs provided by the two example, restricted response or controlled response. Second is extended response or uncontrolled response. So, restricted response AC questions. Restricted response usually limits both the content and the response by restricting the scope of the topic to be discussed. Useful for measuring learning outcomes requires interpretation and application data in a specific area. And the example of restricted response is describe two situations that demonstrate the application of the law of supply and demand. Do not use the example discussed in class. The second example is state the main differences between the Vietnam War and previous war in which the United States has participated. So the next is advantage of restricted response questions. First is restricted response question is more structured. Second, measure specific learning outcomes. Third, restricted response provide for more easy to assessment. And the last is any outcomes measured by an objective interpretive exercise can be measured by a restricted response essay question. So the next is limitation of restricted response question. Restricted response question restrict the scope of the topic to be discussed and indicate the nature of the desired response, which limits student opportunity to demonstrate this behavior. Extended response essay question. Extended response questions allow students to select information that they think is pertinent to organize the answer in accordance with their best judgment and to integrate and evaluate ideas as they think suitable. They do not set limits on the length or exact content to be discussed. Example of extended response essay question is compare development in international relations in the administration of President William Clinton and President George B. Bush. Cite example when possible. Next is imagine that you and a friend found a magic wand. Write a story about an adventure that you and your friend had within the magic wand. And the next is advantage of extended response question. This type of essay item is mostly useful in measuring learning outcomes as the higher cognitive levels of education objectives such as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation levels. The next is they expose the individual's differences in attitudes, values, creative ability. So limits of extended response question is they are insufficient for measuring knowledge of factual materials because they call for extensive detail in selected content area at a time. Second, scoring such type of responses is usually difficult and unreliable since the examinees have free will in a agree of factual information of varying degree of correctness, coherence, and expression. So, more major differences. First is objective, interpretive. Second, restrictive response AC. Third, extended response AC. So the advantage of AC question is the freedom of response allows the student to express himself in his own words. It measures complex learning outcomes that cannot be measured by other means. As it promotes the development of problem-solving skills. It helps students to improve their writing skills such as writing speed. It encourages creativity by allowing their own unique ways. That's all from my report. Thank you for listening. Have a great day and God bless everyone.
Now we've come so far. We are now at the sixth lesson, which is item analysis and validation. For the subtopics of this lesson, we have item analysis, validation, and validity, and the last one is reliability. So for our specific learning outcomes, at the end of the topic, the students are expected to explain the meaning of item analysis, item validity, reliability, item difficulty, and discrimination indexed. Analyze test items by determining its validity and reliability, and justify the use of different measures of validity and reliability. Now, before we start with our discussion, let me ask you a question. Why do you think it is important to have a tryout and validation of test items before conducting the actual test? So you can type your answers on the in-call messages, and you are free to express your thoughts and ideas in relation to the question. Item analysis. It is the act of analyzing student responses to individual exam questions with the purpose of evaluating the quality of the exam. Item analysis is especially valuable in improving items which will be used again in later tests, but it can also be used to eliminate ambiguous or misleading items in a single test administration. In addition, item analysis is valuable for increasing instructors' skills in test construction and identifying specific areas of course content which need greater emphasis or clarity. That is what we call the item analysis, and according to Lee of 2019, it is an important tool to uphold test effectiveness and fairness. There are two characteristics that are given importance by teachers. item difficulty, and the discrimination index. Difficulty index. The difficulty of an item is defined as the proportion of test takers who answer an item correctly. If you remember during our high school days, when after the exam or the test, we will do some tracking, then the teacher will either let us raise our hand if we got the wrong answer or the right answer to that question. Then our teacher will list the number of students who got the right answer or vice versa for that specific question. It is to get the item difficulty. So the formula would be item difficulty is equal to number of students with correct answer divided by total number of students. So for example, in an item of test, 22 students were not able to answer the item right, while 58 students were able to answer the item right. What is the item difficulty indexed? Here, the total number of students is 80. So once again, our formula is item difficulty is equivalent to number of students with correct answer divided by total number of students. We got 58 students who got the right answer divided by the total number of students, which is 80. The answer would be 0.725 or 72.5%. Alright, so how do we decide on the basis of this index whether the item is too difficult or too easy? The following arbitrary rule is often used. As you can see in your screen, we have range of difficulty index and its interpretation and action. If the answer in finding item difficulty is 0 to 0.25, the question is difficult and it is either needs revision or we need to discard it. If it is 0.26 to 0.75, it is on right difficulty and you just need to retain the question. Now if it's 0.76 and above, then it's easy and it's either needs revision or we totally discard the item. Okay, now to test if you really understood the discussion about item analysis, focusing on item index, determining its item index, let's answer this question. What is the difficulty index of an item if 25 students out of 100 students got the item correctly? Remember our formula, item index is equivalent to number of students who got the correct answer divided by the total number of students. If your answer is 0.25 or 25%, then you really understand the discussion. The next one will be discrimination index that would be discussed by Mr. Makatigib.
Good day everyone, I am Bismarck A. Makatigib, a third-year BS Ed Math student at Norsu Shatun campus. Today, I am going to discuss about discrimination index, but before that, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the purpose of discrimination index? If you have any ideas, you may comment it in the comment section. So, what is discrimination index? Item discrimination refers to the ability of an item to differentiate among students on the basis of how well they know the material being tested. The discrimination index is a basic measure of the validity of an item. It is a measure of an item's ability to discriminate between those who scored high on the total test and those who scored low. Comprehensively, discrimination index is the difference between the proportion of the top scorers who got an item correct and the proportion of the lowest scorers who got the item correct. A way to derive such a measure is to measure how difficult an item is with respect to those in the upper 25% of the class and how difficult it is with respect to those in the lower 25% of the class. Though there are several steps in its calculation, once computed, this index can be interpreted as an indication of the extent to which overall knowledge of the content area or mastery of the skills is related to the response on an item. Perhaps the most crucial validity standard for a test item is that whether a student got an item correct or not is due to their level of knowledge or ability and not due to something else such as chance or test bias. Here are the steps in calculating the discrimination index. First step is to compute each student's score, that is, count the number of items each student got correct. Our second step is divide the class into groups on the basis of total score, 25% highest scores and 25% lowest scores. The middle group, middle 50%, is not needed in computing discrimination index. Our third step, for each item, count the number of students in the high-scoring group that got the item right. Our fourth step, divide this number by the total number in the high-scoring group. Our fifth step, repeat steps 3 and 4 for each item, this time using only the low-scoring group. For our last step, for each item, subtract the proportion of low-scoring students who got the item right from the proportion of high-scoring students who got it right. The remainder is the discrimination index. Next is we have our discrimination index formula. Discrimination index is equal to du minus dl, and discrimination index is equal to Ru minus Rl over 1/2 times T, where Ru is the number of students in the upper group who answered correctly, Rl is the number of students in the lower group who answered correctly, and T is the total number of students who answered the item. Let us have an example. Consider a multiple choice type of test of which the following data were obtained. This is our given data. It is provided here that the correct answer is B. We will first follow the formula di is equal to du minus dl, but before we proceed, let us first find the value of these two. For our du is equal to 15 over 20, which results to 0.75, and for our dl is equal to 5 over 20, which results to 0.25. Now that we have the value of du and dl, let us substitute and subtract. 0.75 minus 0.25 is equal to 0.50 or 50%. Therefore, the item has a good discriminating power. Note, distractor A is not an effective distractor since this was never selected by students. It is an implausible distractor. Distractors C and D appear to have good appeal, hence plausible distractors. Now, let's proceed to our second example. What's the discrimination index of an item with the following number of students who got the correct answers from different groups? There are 80 students who took the test. Upper group 16, middle group 12, lower group 10. We have our formula di is equal to Ru minus Rl over 1/2 times T. So the value of our Ru, which is the upper group, is 16, and for our Rl, which is the lower group, is 10. Then our T is equal to 40 since there are 80 students who took the test, and the middle 50%, which refers to the 40 students, is not included in computing the discrimination index. Next is, we will subtract 16 minus 10, which results to 6, and 1/2 times 40 is equal to 20. So 6 divided by 20 is equal to 0.3. As for the discrimination index, we have the following arbitrary rule. Range of discrimination index -1.0 to -0.50, our interpretation, can discriminate but item is questionable. Action is discard. -0.51 to 0.45, our interpretation is Non-discriminating, our action is revise. 0.46 to 1.0, our interpretation is discriminating item and our action is retain. That ends my discussion. If you have any questions, don't forget to put it in the comment section below, and you may also share your insights and thoughts on discrimination index. Thank you for listening and have a good day ahead.
Good day, everyone. So for today's video, I will introduce to you the terms validation and validity. So what is validation and what is validity? Validation is to evaluate the plausibility of the claims based on the test scores. Validation therefore requires a clear statement of the claims inherent in the proposed interpretations and uses of the test scores. Public claims require public justification. Validity is the extent to which the scores from a measure represent the variable they are intended to. It refers to the degree to which evidence supports the interpretations of test scores and the process of collecting and analyzing the evidence to support the meaningfulness and usefulness of the test is called validation. There are three main types of evidence that may be collected. These are construct-related evidence of validity, content-related evidence of validity, and criterion-related evidence of validity. But in my topic, I will discuss only the first type of evidence, which is construct validity. Now, let us discuss the term construct. A construct is a theoretical concept, theme, or idea based on empirical observations. It's a variable that's usually not directly measurable. Constructs can range from simple to complex. For example, a concept like a hand preference is easily assessed. A simple survey question: ask participants which hand is their dominant hand. Or observations: ask participants to perform simple tasks such as picking up an object or drawing a cat and observe which hand they use to execute the task. A more complex concept like social anxiety requires more nuanced measurements, such as psychometric questionnaires and clinical interviews. Simple constructs tend to be narrowly defined, while complex constructs are broader and made up of dimensions. Dimensions are different parts of a construct that are coherently linked to make it up as a whole. So what is construct validity? Construct validity is about how well a test measures the concept it was designed to evaluate. It's crucial to establishing the overall validity of a method. Assessing construct validity is especially important when you are researching something that can't be measured or observed directly, such as intelligence, self-confidence, or happiness. You need multiple observable or measurable indicators to measure those constructs. Construct validity concerns the extent to which your test or measure accurately assesses what it's supposed to. In research, it's important to operationalize construct into concrete and measurable characteristics based on your idea of the construct and its dimensions. Be clear on how you define your construct and how the dimensions relate to each other before you collect or analyze data. This helps you ensure that any measurement method you use accurately assesses the specific construct you are investigating as a whole. So you need to remember that when designing or evaluating a measure, it is important to consider whether it really targets the construct of interest or whether it assesses separate but related constructs. It's crucial to differentiate your construct from related constructs and make sure that every part of your measurement technique is solely focused on your specific construct. Now, there are actually two types of construct validity. The main two types are called convergent validity and discriminant validity. When we say convergent validity, the extent to which your measure corresponds to measures of related constructs. However, discriminant validity is the extent to which your measure is unrelated or negatively related to measures of distinct constructs. So in convergent validity, it is defined as the extent to which measures of the same or similar constructs actually correspond to each other. In research studies, you expect measures of related constructs to correlate with one another. If you have two related scales, people who score highly on one scale tend to score highly on the other as well. So, for example, after revising your questionnaire, you distribute it to a sample of college students along with a couple of rating scales. One of these scales is an existing, widely used measure of social anxiety for adults. You check that your new questionnaire has convergent validity by testing whether the responses to it correlate with those for the existing scale. Now, for discriminant validity, conversely, discriminant validity means that two measures of unrelated constructs that should be unrelated, very weakly related, or negatively related actually are in practice. You check for discriminant validity the same way as convergent validity by comparing results for different measures and assessing whether or how they correlate. So how do you select unrelated constructs? It's good to pick constructs that are theoretically distinct or opposing concepts within the same category. For example, if your construct of interest is a personality trait, example is introversion, it is appropriate to pick a completely opposing personality trait, for example, extroversion. Now, how do you measure construct validity? You often focus on assessing construct validity after developing a new measure. It's best to test out a new measure with a pilot study, but there are other options. A pilot study is a trial run of your study. You test out your measure with a small sample to check its feasibility, reliability, and validity. This helps you figure out whether you need to tweak or revise your measure to make sure you are accurately testing your construct. Statistical analysis are often applied to test validity with data from your measures. You test convergent and discriminant validity with correlations to see if results from your test are positively or negatively related to those of other established tests. You can also use regression analysis to assess whether your measure is actually predictive of outcomes that you expect it to predict theoretically. A regression analysis that supports your expectations strengthens your claim of construct validity. So there are threats to construct validity. It is important to recognize and counter threats to construct validity for a robust research design. The most common threats are the following. poor operationalization, experimenter expectancies, and subject bias. Now, for poor operationalization, it is a big threat to construct validity because it is poor operationalization of the construct. A good operational definition of a construct helps you measure it accurately and precisely every time. Your measurement protocol is clear and specific, and it can be used under different conditions by other people. Without a good operational definition, you may have random or systematic error, which compromises your results. Your measure may not be able to accurately assess your construct. Experimenter expectancies is all about a study which can bias your results. It's best to be aware of this research bias and take steps to avoid it. To combat this threat, use researcher triangulation and involve people who don't know the hypothesis in taking measurements in your study. Since they don't have strong expectations, they are unlikely to bias the results. The third threat is called subject bias. When participants hold expectations about the study, their behaviors and responses sometimes influenced by their own biases. This can threaten your construct validity because you may not be able to accurately measure what you are interested in. You can mitigate subject bias by using masking to hide the true purpose of the study from the participants. By giving them a cover story for your study, you can lower the effect of your subject bias on your results. So that's all for validation and validity, followed by the first among the three types of validity, which is construct validity. For more information, you can visit this link displayed in your screen. Thank you so much, and the next types of evidences will be discussed by Mr. Rainiel Madolio.
Hello everyone, my name is Rainiel Madalio. I am from BS in English 3. At this point, I will be continuing the discussion which has been started by Ms. Monique Makatigev on validation. Specifically, I will be discussing the content and criterion validity. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, let's begin with content validity. Is the test fully representative of what it aims to measure? To achieve content validity, the content of the test must cover all relevant areas of the subject that the test aims to measure. Content validity is the degree to which a test or assessment instrument evaluates all aspects of the topic, construct, or behavior that is designed to measure. Do the items fully cover the subject? High content validity indicates that the test fully covers the topic for the target audience. Lower results suggest that the test does not contain relevant facets of the subject matter. Investigators frequently assess content validity when creating a test or survey that appraises knowledge of a subject area. Does the test cover the full range of the topics? In psychology, researchers often consider content validity when developing a psychological scale, such as a depression scale. Does the instrument cover the full range of dimensions related to the psychological construct, or only a portion?
For example, imagine that I design a test that evaluates how well students understand statistics at a level of appropriate for an introductory college course. Content validity assesses my test to see if it covers suitable material for the subject area at that level of expertise. In other words, does my test cover all pertinent facets of the content area? Is it missing concepts?
Now, How to measure content validity? Measuring content validity involves assessing individual questions on a test and asking experts whether each one targets characteristics that the instrument is designed to cover. This process compares the test against its goals and the theoretical properties of the construct. Researchers systematically determine whether each item contributes and that no aspect is overlooked. Now, let's proceed to the criterion validity. Do the results correspond to a different test of the same thing? To achieve criterion validity, there must be a high correlation between the result of your measurement and the result of the criterion measurement, or result of a different test. When the criterion is measured at the same time as the construct, criterion validity is referred to as concurrent validity. However, when the criterion is measured at some point in the future after the construct has been measured, it is referred to as predictive validity. Criterion validity or criterion-related validity evaluates how accurately a test measures the outcome it was designed to measure. Concurrent validity measures test and criterion variables in the present, while predictive validity measures those in the future. To establish criterion validity, you need to compare your test result to criterion variables. Criterion variables are often referred to as a gold standard measurement. They comprise other tests that are widely accepted as valid measures of a construct.
Here is an example of criterion validity. A researcher wants to know whether a college entrance exam is able to predict future academic performance. First semester GPA can serve as the criterion variable as it is an accepted measure of academic performance. The researcher can then compare the college entry exam scores of 100 students to their GPA after one semester in college. If the scores of the two tests are close, then the college entry exam has criterion validity. When your test agrees with the criterion variable, it has high criterion validity. However, criterion variables can be difficult to find.
That's it for a day. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you've learned something from my report. And stand by for Miss Magdasok and Miss Asabel will further discuss on test reliability. Thank you and have a great day ahead.
Good day, everyone. I am Maria Jasame R. Magdasok, and my partner and I are tasked to discuss the last topic for Lesson 6, Module 3, which is about reliability. Before I start my discussion, I will first introduce to you the topics that I will be covering in this video. So for today's video, I will be introducing to you the definitions of reliability along with the four methods of calculating the reliability of an instrument. So now let us proceed to the discussion or the introduction of what is reliability. Now let us proceed to the definition of reliability. Reliability refers to the consistency of a measure. It is the extent to which the test taker's scores does not depend on the specific day and time of the test, the specific questions or problems that were on the edition of the test that the test taker took, and the specific raters who rated the test taker's responses. So each test contains some error. So these errors are the portions of the score on the test that is not relevant to the construct that you hope to measure. So these errors could be the result of poor test construction, distractions from when the participant took the measure, or how the results from the assessment were marked. I have mentioned in the earlier part of this video that we will be discussing the four methods of calculating the reliability of an instrument. So in my part, I will be discussing two of the methods of calculating the reliability of an instrument, and the other two will be discussed by my partner. So now let us start with a discussion about the methods of calculating the reliability of an instrument. So the four methods of calculating the reliability of an instrument are split half reliability, test retest reliability, parallel forms reliability, and last is the inter-rater reliability. So I will be discussing the split half reliability and the parallel form reliability. Now let us first discuss split half reliability. So split half reliability determines how much error in a test score is due to poor test construction. It is a statistical method used to measure the consistency of the scores of a test. And it is determined by dividing the total set of items, which are the questions, relating to a construct of interest into halves, which are odd-numbered and even-numbered questions, and comparing the results obtained from two subsets of items thus created. In split half reliability, a test for a single knowledge area is split into two parts, and then both parts are given to one group of students at the same time. The scores from both parts of the test are correlated. A reliable test will have a high correlation, indicating that the student would perform equally well or as poorly on both halves of the test. To calculate split half reliability, we have to administer one test once and then calculate the reliability index by coefficient alpha, which are the Kuder-Richardson 20 or KR20 formula and the Spearman-Brown formula. This is the Kuder-Richardson 20 formula, and this is the Spear-Brown formula. Now, let us proceed to the second method of calculating reliability of an instrument. So the next one is the parallel forms reliability. The parallel forms reliability determines how comparable are two different versions of the same measure. So it is a measure of reliability obtained by administering different versions of an assessment tool. So both of these versions must contain items that probe the same construct, skill, knowledge base, and etc. to the same group of individuals. To calculate the parallel forms reliability, we have to administer the two tests to the same participants within a short period of time. So correlate the test scores of the two tests. An example of parallel form reliability is that both groups take both tests. Group A takes test A first, and Group B takes test B first. So the results of the two tests are compared, and the results are almost identical, indicating high parallel forms reliability. Now, before I proceed to the last topic that I will be discussing in this video as my part of the discussion, I have here a question for all of you, and you may answer through the in-call messages. So the question is, to what extent do the test taker who performed well on one edition of the test can also perform well on another edition? Again, you may answer or you may input your answers in the in-call messages. Now, let us proceed to the last topic that I will be discussing in my part of the discussion. So we will be discussing last the alternate form reliability. Alternate form reliability is a test that is reliable if there is consistency on test takers across different editions of the test, containing different questions or problems, testing the same types of knowledge or skills at the same difficulty level. The alternate forms reliability is a measure of reliability between two different forms of the same test. Two equivalent but different tests are administered. Scores are correlated, and a reliability coefficient is calculated. A test would be deemed reliable if differences in one test observed across correlate with differences in equivalent test scores. In other terms, alternate forms reliability is a concept in statistics which means that two different versions of the same questionnaire, form, or test should produce similar responses from the individuals being tested. For example, if both Group A and Group B were given the same type of questionnaire or test, they should also produce the same answers or responses. Now that's it for my part of the report. Again, I have discussed the three methods of calculating the reliability of an instrument, which are the split half reliability, parallel forms reliability, and the alternate forms reliability. The next two methods of calculating the reliability of an instrument will be discussed by my partner. To have better understanding of our discussion or to learn more about our discussion, there is a link provided in our module that can be found on lesson 6, so you can visit that link, and there are examples provided also in there.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa P. Osabel, your next reporter from BS Ed English 3. So, once again, good day. Without further ado, let's continue the discussion. Since Maria Jessa already discussed the first types of reliability, now I'll be talking about the second and third types of reliability, which are inter-rater reliability and test-retest reliability. First, inter-rater reliability. It is consistency of the scoring process on a test for which the scores are judged by raters. This means that this reliability is the extent to which two or more raters or observers, coders, examiners agree. So we mentioned earlier the scoring process of the response. Now, there are two basic approaches to the scoring of constructed response test questions. These approaches are called analytical scoring and holistic scoring. In both cases, the scoring is based on a set of guidelines called a rubric. The rubric tells the scorer what features of the response to focus on and how to decide how many points to award to the response. But the difference between the two is that in analytical scoring, the rater awards points for specific features of the response. In holistic scoring, the rater makes a single judgment of the whole response. So the second reliability is test-retest reliability. It requires using the method of measurement on a group of people at one time, using it again on the same group of people at a later time, and then looking at test-retest correlation between the two sets of scores. Therefore, it is a measure that produces highly inconsistent scores. Over time cannot be a very measure of a construct. So it assesses the consistency of the test results. Let's say, for example, a test with high test-retest reliability will produce similar scores if the same participants take it more than once. If participants or the students take a test with low test-retest reliability, their scores may be very different even though they take the same test again. To sum up, the test-retest reliability is commonly estimated by calculating the correlation coefficient of the measured values at two separate time points. A higher correlation between the values of the test occasions indicates greater temporal stability or test-retest reliability. So before I end this discussion, I just want to share a statement from Navarro, Santos, and Corpus in 2018 that validity and reliability are related concepts. If an instrument is unreliable, it cannot get valid outcomes. As reliability improves, validity may improve. However,
If an instrument is shown scientifically to be valid, then it is most certain that it's also reliable. Now that I am done with my assigned topic, so that could be all for Module 3. I hope we can learn and apply all of this to ourselves as future educators. In order to achieve that goal, let's continue learning and strive harder, future Mom and Sir. Thank you and God bless us all.